Rock on, Rockies fans. Welcome into a Friday installment of your Locked On Rockies podcast, where the Rockies are getting ready to start a weekend series with the Chicago White Sox, a battle of the cellar dwellers. And I think the loser of this series will firmly take over as officially the worst team in Major League Baseball. We'll talk about that. We'll also continue along with our trade deadline discussions right here on your Locked On Rockies podcast as we get you guys ready for the weekend ahead. Let's get into it. Talk some rocks.
You are Locked On Rockies, your daily Colorado Rockies podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
It is your Locked On Rockies podcast, Locked On Sports, your team every day. I am your fill-in host, Aniello Piro. You can follow me on social media at Media by AP if your heart desires. This is my last episode filling in for the great Paul Holden this week. He'll be back at it on Monday with the traditional Locked On Rockies podcast, but had a great time hosting this show. This is my second solo episode of the week, but I also want to give a tip of the cap to my guys, Drew Creasman, Kevin Henry, and Alex Becker. Those are the three guests that you've seen at some point or another this week on the Locked On Rockies podcast. So shout out to them. Certainly makes my job a little bit easier. And it's nice to get some different voices, some different opinions in there on the show to see what other people are thinking about with the Colorado Rockies. So if you missed any of those shows, you can check out the audio on the standard feed, the Locked On Rockies podcast feed, or if you're watching here on YouTube, you can just go and peruse this week's episodes. Again, my guy, Drew Creasman, Kevin Henry, and Alex Becker were the folks that joined me throughout the week. So shout out to them. Good conversation about the outlook of the Rockies, trade deadline. And Drew, for reference here, guys, he's been around the club for going on a decade now. So some great insight about what the clubhouse feel is, what's going on with the team. The episode with Kevin Henry, I thought was fantastic as well, because Kevin, is at just about every single home series for the Colorado Rockies in some capacity or another. So, he works for Just Baseball as well. So he's got some good insight about the other teams that come to town. But I thought our episode was really good because we hit on some major talking points about which players could be traded and the reasoning as to why. So I'll rehash some of those thoughts on today's episode of the Locked On Rockies podcast, but I definitely suggest you go out and check out this week's episodes. A lot of great guests, a lot of great information about the Colorado Rockies. But again, follow me on social media at Media by AP. And if you're looking for more Colorado Rockies content, I am the standard host of the Locked On Rockies postcast. So make sure to go on over to the Locked On Denver Sports YouTube channel, smash that subscribe button, because you're maybe wondering what a postcast is. Well, it's not so different than what it sounds. It's essentially a live instant reaction post-game show. Sometimes I go live in the ninth inning. If not, I'm live within usually 10 to 15 minutes after the game is concluded. And we'll break down everything that we saw on the diamond in that game and how it unfolded. So we'll break it all down. Again, make sure to subscribe to that Locked On Denver Sports YouTube channel. But all right, let's get into it today, folks. And like I said, I want to rehash some thoughts about how the Rockies may choose to approach this trade deadline, just because that's the one real relevant thing with this team moving forward right now. Just knowing that they're kind of down and out, knowing that there really isn't much hope or vision for the rest of the season outside of, as I like to say, embracing the suck, which includes a lot of losing, learning a lot about your young guys, and taking it from that point forward. So we'll break it all down here on your Locked On Rockies podcast, But let's get into it. And I've got some I'll save maybe some of the trade deadline stuff for the second and third segments as we kind of continue along with the show here. But let's start with what's front and center, and that is this weekend series coming up with what happened to my thing? There it is. Sorry. I accidentally, you ever I opened up a million new tabs on accident, so I'm going to be jumping around here. But I have talked about it all throughout the week, and you guys have heard me talk about it. This series this weekend, I think, is a battle of the bottom feeders, for lack of a better phrase. As the Rockies and the Chicago White Sox are going to get ready to do battle here. And just an update on the standings before we dive into the matchup. The Rockies currently in the bottom, in last place of the National League West. They're 23 games behind the Los Angeles Dodgers. The Rockies at 27-53 on the year. The only team that is even close to the Rockies record in the National League is the Miami Marlins, who actually just beat the Atlanta Braves yesterday. I saw they are 29-52. So the Rockies are now 2 games worse than the Miami Marlins, which is essentially your barometer for worst teams in the National League. So the Rockies, as of June 28th at around 1 o'clock in the afternoon, are the worst team statistically in the National League. That said, they are not the worst team in Major League Baseball statistically, as that crown belongs to the Chicago White Sox, who have only won 22 games on the season. The Chicago White Sox are 22-61. That's a win percentage of .265. I mean, that is as bad as it gets. I mean, look, there's some bottom feeders in the American League. The Blue Jays aren't very good at 37-43. The Athletics have been a disaster. They're 29-54. The Angels even are 34-46. I mean, the Angels right now are 10 wins better than the Chicago White Sox, which I think really puts all of this into perspective, because this White Sox team, I was joking with my guy Danny Bailey here at the Mile High Sports Studios earlier. I don't think I can name you a single player on the White Sox. Like, is Tim Anderson still there? I don't think I've watched a second of White Sox baseball this season. Oh, no, Tim Anderson plays for the Marlins. So funny how that works. But long story short, this is a grudge match between the cellar dwellers in Major League Baseball. The Rockies, the worst team in the National League, and the White Sox, the worst team in the American League. And looking at it for this series coming up tonight, Dakota Hudson, who's been rather unlucky. Look, I don't like to give the Rockies a ton of passes. They're not a good team this year. But Dakota Hudson's stat line, I think, is a little misleading. He's 2-10. with a 5.63 ERA and 41 strikeouts. Dakota Hudson gets, let me pull this up, like literally no run support. Well, I guess that'll be a little hard to track. I was going to look up his pitching lines, but that won't tell me what the outcomes of the game, or maybe it will. Why don't we just do it live? It is a Friday, right? We're all just hanging out. Dakota Hudson game log, because he has just been relatively unlucky for the Rockies. So, I mean, look at this. The Rockies have lost his last 4 starts that he's pitched in. And really the only start in which he got shelled in was on Friday the 21st. That was a week ago from today, as when we're recording. He got shelled. 3 innings pitched, 11 hits, 8 runs. All of them earned 2 home runs, 2 walks, no strikeouts. He got absolutely destroyed in that one. But, the other 3 losses, he's actually been okay. Against the Pittsburgh Pirates on the 16th, he went 5 1/3, gave up 7 hits, 3 earned runs, 1 walk, 5 strikeouts. I mean, for the Rockies, you're going to take that. That's a pretty solid start. The Rockies lose that game 8-2. They give him no run support. And then back on the 10th against the Minnesota Twins, he was great. 6 2/3 innings pitched, 4 hits allowed, 2 runs, only 1 of them earned, 2 walks and a strikeout, and they lose that game 5-0. So the Rockies gave him absolutely no run support in that game. And on the 5th against the Cincinnati Reds, again, he was fine. 4 1/3 innings pitched. You like a little bit more out of the tank there. But 5 hits, 4 earned runs, gave up 2 home runs, which killed him. 4 walks and 4 strikeouts. So again, not the best numbers in the world from Dakota Hudson, but I would say I could make the argument that at least 2 of those 4 games, which came back to back, that against Minnesota, against Pittsburgh, he pitched well enough and long enough into the game to put this team in a position to win. And unfortunately, the Rockies offense has just been virtually lifeless for basically the entire month of June, if we're being honest with ourselves here. But last 4 starts, 11-5 loss to Washington, 8-2 loss to Pittsburgh, 5-0 loss against Minnesota, and a 12-7 loss against the Cincinnati Reds. It is kind of funny. The one game that he did win, or the Rockies did win when he started, he also recorded the win in this game, was back on May 31st against the Dodgers. The Rockies won that game 4-1. He went 7 innings, 4 hits, 1 earned run, 1 walk, 3 strikeouts. That's the last time the Rockies won a game with Dakota Hudson as the starting pitcher, and that came all the way it's essentially a month ago on May 31st. So that's what's going up on the mound tonight for the Rockies. They'll take on Drew Thorpe of the Chicago White Sox. He's 1-1 with a 5.02 earned run average. And then on Saturday, and a programming note, that is an early first pitch, 12:10 first pitch Mountain Time. So if you're going to watch that game, make sure to plan accordingly. Although it's a lovely day. It's a lovely weekend out here in the Mile High City. So I do not blame anyone if they don't want to partake in engaging in Rockies baseball and maybe want to go enjoy the great outdoors instead. But this is an interesting one as Cal Quantrill, who's been the Rockies' best pitcher, and we'll talk about Mr. Quantrill a lot in the second and third segments. He's 6-5 with a 3.50 earned run average to pair with 64 strikeouts. He has been great for the Rockies and great in general by Major League Baseball standards. He'll take on Jonathan Cannon of the White Sox. He's 1-2 with a 4.59 earned run average to pair with 29 strikeouts. And on Sunday, another 12-10 first pitch in Chicago. It'll be Kyle Freeland, who's 0-3 with a 9.55 ERA. Hopefully he can, find his footing as this season progresses. This would be a great spot to do it against a pretty bad Chicago White Sox team, and he'll square off against Garrett Crockett, who's 6-6 with a 3.05 ERA and 130 strikeouts. So strikeout machine. Bet the over is maybe what I'm saying. I got to do my FanDuel read here in a little bit. But yeah, it's going to be an ugly series, whichever way you slice it. So the two cellar dwellers, Rockies, White Sox, coming up this weekend. If you're like me and, you got to find ways to get engaged. I love the fact that it's two bad teams, right? Like two awful teams should mean maybe decent baseball since the level of competition is somewhat similar. So we shall see how it all breaks out or shakes out, as the Rockies get ready to take on the White Sox starting on this Friday evening. But all right, let's hit a quick break. When we come back, we'll continue along with the conversation about this series. So that's right here on your Locked On Rockies podcast. We'll hit a quick break, come back, and do just that, talking Rockies baseball on this Friday, June the 28th. Stick with us. Where is my lower third? There it is. All right. Let me tell you about our friends over at Booking.com, because with summer travel heating up, especially travel for baseball games, it's time to explore those U.S. cities you were always secretly wanting to learn more about. Yes, we're talking about your rivals' cities. With hotels, bed and breakfasts, vacation rentals, resorts, and so much more on Booking.com, you might just find your perfect stay even in your baseball rival's city. An example, a New York fan heads to Boston to catch baseball games on Boston's turf. Who wants their team to win? But they're also excited to have a lobster roll and fall in love with their waterfront hotel. From hotels that overlook stadiums to family-friendly resorts, Booking.com has so many choices across the U.S. for your summer travel this Major League Baseball season. The right stay can make you feel a fan of any U.S. city, even if it's your rivals. Book today on Booking.com, on the site, or on the Booking.com app. Be sure to check out our friends at Booking.com, folks. I'm getting ready to head out to Vegas for the Sphere. I was looking through Booking.com. I'm probably going out to New York a little bit later this summer to go check out my Mets, as they're hot right now. And Booking.com is certainly the place to go find your place to stay. So be sure to check out our friends over at Booking.com, Booking.yeah, as the summer travel season is here. Booking.com, check them out and let them know that Locked On Sports sent you. And where are you? There you are. All right, and then let me also tell you about our friends over at FanDuel, because I love sports. I love them so much that I never want them to stop. But as the playoffs wind down, we get fewer and fewer games, and the sports aren't always sportsing like I want them to. But FanDuel lets me keep the sports going whenever I want. All I have to do is open up the app and dream up bets anytime I'm in the mood. And this summer, FanDuel is hooking up all customers with a boost or bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So head over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and start making the most out of your summer. FanDuel is an official sports betting partner of Major League Baseball, and obviously there's going to be plenty of Rockies games to bet on the rest of the way. We've got the Copa America going on right now. We've got What else do we got? We got the Euro Cup going on. We got the golf tournaments coming up. Our friends over at FanDuel are going to make sure that you're going to be taken care of when it comes to your sports wagering needs. So go over to FanDuel.com/lockedon and check them out. FanDuel is one of my personal favorite sports books to bet with. And like I said, they're hooking you up. They're hooking not just me, all of the customers on the FanDuel base with a boost or a bonus daily. That's right. There's something for everyone every day, all summer long. So make sure to stay up to date with our friends over at FanDuel, and good luck on your wagers, especially if you're betting Rockies White Sox this weekend. All right, welcome on back into your Locked On Rockies podcast. I am your fill-in host, Aniello Piro. You can follow me on social media at Media by AP. My guy, Paul Holden, will be back in the driver's seat starting next week. It's been a blast filling in for him. Always love talking Rockies baseball and baseball in general. And again, if you want more Rockies content, be sure to check out the Locked On Denver Sports YouTube channel, where I am hosting the Locked On Rockies postcast, which is an instant reaction 30-minute show after just about each and every Colorado Rockies game the rest of the way. But we left off talking about this series between the Rockies and the White Sox. Again, tonight it'll be Dakota Hudson on the mound against Drew Thorpe to open us up here. Cal Quantrill on Saturday, followed by Kyle Freeland on Sunday. So we'll see how this all shakes out. But I said it with Alex yesterday, and I forget if I've mentioned it on any of the other shows. I think I mentioned them earlier in the week when they were playing Houston, and my goodness, that was a dreadful series. I know it was just a 2-game set, but the Rockies absolutely chewed up and spit out in that series. It was a tough watch, but I had also mentioned, I think it was on yesterday's show, where that was a team meeting type of a series, and it's nice that the Rockies have that Thursday off day to try to reset mentally, physically, spiritually, whatever it might be. Because they have looked lifeless for the better part of a week now. And if there was ever an opportunity for them to snap out of this funk and try to get back on track to some extent, I think it comes this weekend against the Chicago White Sox. And look, if the Rockies can't take 2 or 3, I'm not saying they got a sweep, but if the Rockies can't win this series by taking 2 out of the 3 games, they're the worst team in baseball. Like that's what this is the toilet bowl series. Like whoever loses this series is officially stamped, in my opinion, as the worst team in Major League Baseball. And it would not surprise me if the Rockies lost this series just with how they've been playing. Look, the pitching's been all right, but I don't know what's going on with the offense. And look, they're going to have an opportunity to hopefully break out of this slump here. Drew Thorpe, 5.02 ERA. Jonathan Cannon, 4.59 ERA. And Garrett Crockett, who's actually been pretty good, he has a 3.05 ERA. But tonight, an opportunity to set the tone for the Rockies against this White Sox team and try to snap out of this slump that they currently find themselves in. So we'll see how it plays out. But, this is it's going to be an ugly series. So if you like some charm, if you like some novelty, if you like to dumb it down a little bit, this is probably the series for you. So we shall see. But I want to transition here and start talking a little Major League Baseball trade deadline as it pertains to the Rockies, because I spent a good bulk of the week talking about it with my guests. And I know I've given you guys my opinion, but, I think something that Alex talked about yesterday with me on the show is really sticking out. Look, I think they need to trade Elias Diaz for sure. And I've been on record saying that that's the one trade that the Rockies do need to make. The fact that he's still on the injured list and hasn't played for a couple of weeks now, I think is definitely going to hamper his trade value compared to if he was, playing all of this time and whatnot. But I'm starting to shift my opinion a little bit. Cal Quantrill has probably got to be the other guy, like Elias Diaz and Cal Quantrill. And it would not surprise me if the Rockies don't trade either of them, to be honest with you. But Quantrill is the guy that I think can really help out another team that is looking to get over the top into the postseason push or looking to solidify themselves as a World Series contender. And look, I know that Quantrill's been on the record talking about how he loves embracing the challenge of Coors Field. Hard to find pitchers that want to do that on a game in, game out basis and whatnot. But at the end of the day, I refer back to this, what is Cal Quantrill's long-term outlook with this team? Is Cal Quantrill going to be with this team when Ezekiel Tovar and Zach Veen and Romo and Amador and all these guys are in the primes of their careers? I don't think so. So you're going to get another top draft pick in all likelihood this offseason. So why not add some more, high quality prospects to the arsenal here as you build for another day? But I saw this on a fan. I think it's like Pinstripe. some sort of Yankees fan site, and I was reading about it. And I wanted to share some of these thoughts with you. So I'll push this up on the screen, then we'll kind of break it down, because the Yankees are a team that is obviously going to be buyers come the trade deadline. And the Rockies are naturally going to be a team that in theory should be sellers. So here's what they write. They say, who are the two teams already looking towards the future? One is the Miami Marlins, a team that got off to such a terrible start to the season that they traded Luis Arraez for prospects the first week of May. The other, unfortunately, is the Colorado Rockies. The Rockies are the very definition of a bad team. Despite playing in Coors Field, they struggle to put up runs, scoring just 4.28 runs per game, and their WRC plus of 84 ranks the third worst in all of baseball. Their pitching staff is arguably the worst in baseball, in particular the bullpen, surrendering 5.89 runs per game, more than 3/4 of a run more than the second-place Chicago White Sox, who happens to be their opponent coming up this weekend, as we mentioned. Outside of a random 7-game winning streak in early to mid-May, they have not won more than 2 consecutive games all season. Well, I didn't even know that. That's hard to believe. That's hard to believe. You're telling me, let me pull this down real quick. You're telling me the Rockies, and I guess it's not that shocking, they went on that 7-game winning streak and they have not had at least a 3-game winning streak outside of that. That's tough. That is hard to believe. But since the start of June, they're 6-17. Most years, this is a team that you look to acquire supplemental pieces at the deadline from, not spin a major splash. So I agree. And this brings me to the point about Cal Quantrill that was in the article as well. They say in recent years, the Yankees have made a habit of acquiring former Rockies players, having acquired Mike Tauchman, old pal, via trade, and signing DJ LeMahieu, Adam Ottavino, and Troy Tulowitzki as free agents during the 2019 calendar year. Might the Yankees return to the well in 2024 and try to add yet another former Rocky? It's possible. This is the important part. But truth be told, it's probably unlikely. Colorado just doesn't have that many players that would move the needle, and those that would do not seem likely to be moved. And this brings us back to the point that I talked about this week. It was the reporting from Patrick Saunders of the Denver Post, as well as some anecdotes that Kevin Henry added in the pod this week. They're not trading Ryan McMahon. They're not going to, because Ryan McMahon is a good clubhouse guy. Ryan McMahon is on a cheap contract. Ryan McMahon is okay with playing in Colorado. And most importantly, the owner of the ball club, Dick Monfort, loves him some Ryan McMahon. And if Dick Monfort loves him some Ryan McMahon, unless there is a Godfather offer on the table, which probably won't be coming through for McMahon, they're not going to trade him. I mean, the Rockies would have to be blown away with a trade offer, is how I'm interpreting it, to move a guy like a Ryan McMahon, which is not the smartest move, in my opinion. Now, look, if you're going to get nothing, if you're going to get lowballed, hold on to him, right? He's going to all the points I just made. Good value contract, good clubhouse guy, rounding into form as he progresses throughout his major league career. I'm not saying the Rockies should be in a rush to trade Ryan McMahon, but Ryan McMahon is the type of player that fits the profile of a player that should be traded from a team like the Rockies that is building for another day. So we'll see what happens with Ryan Mac, but I just thought that was a good point in this article that I was reading, because even if they should trade some of these guys, they probably won't, because of how the Rockies tend to operate. You know, this is a very risk-averse franchise. I believe it was Steve Phillips who was on with Christopher Mad Dog Russo earlier this year, and they were talking about how the Baltimore Orioles have historically, at least in the last, call it 2 decades, they've been considered the most risk-averse franchise. Obviously, new ownership group, the fruits of their labor are paying off with some of these young guys. And I think you could make the argument that the Rockies are now the most risk-averse franchise in Major League Baseball. They'd rather keep their own and cross their fingers and get lucky than be a little bit more aggressive in the trade market or whatever it might be to try to improve this team in the immediate future. So I just thought that was some good knowledge there and some good talking points about what Ryan McMahon's future might be with this team. And I think it also hits on, what the future for some of these other middle-of-the-line guys, whether it's a Cal Quantrill, Elias Diaz, Brendan Rodgers, among others, Charlie Blackmon. I think it's some good insight about how the Rockies may or may not operate as we approach this Major League Baseball trade deadline. So let's hit a quick break. When we come back, we'll spend the rest of the show talking about Cal Quantrill in particular and what his role with this team might be moving forward. And we'll round out with a couple of thoughts as we get you guys on your way for this weekend. Stick with us. This is your Locked On Rockies podcast. I'm your host, Aniello Piro, back in just a few minutes. All right, let's talk about Game Time, folks, because if you're not getting your tickets through Game Time, I don't know what you're doing, because Game Time is an authorized ticket marketplace of Major League Baseball, which makes getting tickets faster and easier. Prices on the Game Time app actually go down the closer it gets to the first pitch. And with killer last-minute deals, all-in prices, views from your seat, and their lowest price guarantee, Game Time takes the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets. And there's a number of different features with our friends over at Game Time, folks. Let me tell you about some of them. Their last-minute deals are incredible because you can save up to 60% off buying last-minute tickets for sports, concerts, comedy, theater, and all that good stuff with our friends over at Game Time. Their flash deals are also incredible because you can save even more with exclusive in-app deals on select seats ahead of the game or the event. The zone deals are cool too because you can save even more again when you choose a section and let Game Time then choose the seats for you. I love the all-in pricing. Toggling this feature shows you the total upfront with no surprise fees at checkouts. I can't tell you how much I like that. There's nothing more frustrating than putting something in your cart and then all of a sudden there's another 30, 40 bucks worth of fees added on top. You're not going to have to deal with that with our friends over at Game Time because you can toggle in their all-in pricing feature. Plus, you can get panoramic views from your seat in the app before you buy, so you know exactly what kind of view you're going to get. And the lowest price guarantee, or Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Plus, Game Time ticket coverage is covered, or your ticket purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the game with that Game Time ticket coverage. And again, take the guesswork out of buying Major League Baseball tickets with Game Time. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem with code LOCKEDONMLB for $20 off. Download Game Time today. Last minute tickets, lowest prices guaranteed. All right, so welcome on back into your Locked On Rockies podcast. Aniello Piro here. Final solo show for me this week before I pass the baton back off to the great Paul Holden. Thank you guys so much for tuning in. I've appreciated all the feedback, all the commentary and whatnot. Always a good time talking Colorado Rockies baseball with you guys. So I know, like I said, I'm doing the Locked On Rockies postcast as well, so check me out over there on the Locked On Denver Sports YouTube channel. But with Cal Quantrill in particular, we spent a majority of the last segment talking about Ryan McMahon, reading some excerpts from this article that I found online today. Cal Quantrill, I think, may have leapfrogged Elias Diaz, in my opinion, as the guy that the Rockies have to trade, because I do think that Diaz's trade value is just going down by the day when he's not playing right now. I mean, when he was playing and when he is playing, he's one of the best catchers in Major League Baseball and in the National League. But if he's not, he hasn't played in, close to 3 weeks now, maybe even a little bit longer. And if he's not going to be able to play for at least 2 or 3, 4 weeks leading up to the trade deadline to kind of showcase his ability and talents, I just don't think the Rockies are going to be able to get a package that is adequate, to kind of fit the mold of someone of Elias Diaz's skill set. Specifically, this is my favorite part that I like to harp on, at a premium position. These big hitting catchers they don't come around like they used to. They're not as popular as they once were. Elias Diaz, when healthy, is a real difference maker for a team either trying to make the playoffs or looking to solidify themselves as a championship contender. Great clubhouse guy, great with the pitching staff. He would be a great addition to any contending team. But if the Rockies aren't going to get full value for him, I actually will not fault them for holding on to him, because he's a great member of this team. And just because he's hurt, I don't think it should mean that the Rockies should select, pennies on the dollar or accept pennies on the dollar for a guy of his caliber. But Cal Quantrill's a little bit of a different story, because Quantrill, and here's how I look at it. He's 6-5 with a 3.50 ERA right now. Do we think that's sustainable? Do you think Cal Quantrill is going to be this good again next year or the year after if they're able to re-sign him? I would say probably not. Is this maybe the ceiling for Cal Quantrill with the Rockies? Is this the best it's going to be with Cal Quantrill for the Rockies? It very well could be. And look, we saw guys like Ubaldo Jimenez, among some others, that have done a good job of figuring out a way to maneuver Coors Field on a season-in, season-out basis. But with a guy like Cal Quantrill, I'm starting to think that maybe this is the best we're going to see out of him. And the Rockies don't have an opportunity to sell high on a lot of these guys. He's 29 years old, and let's triple check here. I believe he's got one more year of team control before he becomes a UFA and can then, essentially leave the Rockies for nothing, a la John Gray, a la Trevor Story. And yes, I know they got some contemporary picks for those guys, but at the end of the day, Rockies probably could have done a little bit better than just letting those guys walk for that pick. But I mean, you're looking at a guy, he's got his fourth year of arbitration next year, and he's set to become an unrestricted free agent in 2026. So that's my main point. Is this the best version of Cal Quantrill that the Rockies are going to have? Because if it is, move him. He's 29 years old, same age as Ryan McMahon. Look, in 2-3 years from now, this guy might be washed. And this is a guy who had struggled to stick in the major leagues at times because of the up and down performance of his play. Maybe Coors Field has been, a solid landing spot for him, and maybe the Rockies do end up deciding to sign him to a long-term extension. But I think right now Cal Quantrill is the top player that the Rockies could probably get the most value for at their Major League Baseball trade deadline. And with that being the case, I think they have to do their due diligence. I think they have to figure out a way to try to move this guy, especially if he's able to continue to pitch well down the stretch leading up to that trade deadline. Because, again, if it's not part of the long-term future, as in 3 or 4 years from now, what's the point? And I know that means maybe sucking a little bit more and losing games and needing to kind of put together some spot starts and whatnot, because Quantrill's been the one stabilizing force for them in that rotation. But the way that I look at it is, if he's not going to be a part of your team when you're supposed to be getting good, you might as well get some value for him while you still can. And adding in the fact that this may be Cal Quantrill's ceiling with the Rockies. Sell high so that way you don't have to take a discount if you try to move him next year at the deadline because you don't want to sign him to an extension or he's not biting or whatever. This is a prime opportunity for the Rockies to move Cal Quantrill. So we shall see how that shakes out. But Quantrill, Diaz, I think they're the two guys they really have to consider moving if they get the right deals. Brendan Rodgers, Ryan McMahon, maybe Charlie Blackmon. They're not going to move. I think the only guy of those three that I just listed that has the potential to be moved is Brendan Rodgers. And I think that's because they have Aniello Piro, who's going to be able to kind of slide into that position, right? They have some depth there. Chuck's not going anywhere unless Chuck asks to be traded, and I don't think he will. And we just talked about Ryan McMahon as well. Dick Monfort loves some Ryan McMahon. So we shall see how the deadline plays out. But that is going to do it for me, folks. I want to thank you guys so much for rocking with me on this week's episode of the Locked On Rockies podcast. Again, be sure to check out the feed. Great interviews with my guy, Kevin Henry, Drew Kreisman, and Alex Becker. And I know me and my guy, Paul Holden, will be doing some crossover episodes as well. So looking forward to talking Rockies the rest of the way. Paul will be back in the driver's seat starting next week. And you can find me, if you want some more Rockies content and talk, on the Locked On Rockies postcast, which you can find on the Locked On Denver Sports YouTube channel. But that is going to do it for me. Cellar Dwellers series this weekend between the Rockies and the White Sox, and the trade deadline is rapidly approaching. Be sure to check me out on social at Media by AP. But other than that, folks, have a good 4th of July. Have a good weekend, and we'll talk to you guys on the other side.